My name is Liberty Bowers. I'm 35, single, and I've spent the last decade building a life I'm proud of in Minneapolis. Last Sunday, I drove out to my parents' house in Eden Prairie for what was supposed to be a normal family dinner. Mom had the roast in the oven, Dad was watching the game, my younger brother Remy was glued to his phone, and little Mercy was scrolling Facebook. Same as always. Then, halfway through the meal, Mom set down her fork, looked straight at me, and said, "Liberty, your brother needs a new car. You've got savings. We already promised him the Porsche Cayenne. The dealership just needs the rest of the money, $95,000. You can cover it, right?" Dad nodded like it was already decided. Remy finally looked up and grinned, sliding his phone across the table so I could see the exact model, fully loaded deposit already paid, using paperwork with my name on it. I stared at all of them and said 2 words. No way. The room went dead silent. If you've ever had family treat your bank account like it's theirs, smash that subscribe button right now. Because what happened next made me cut them out of my life for good. The room went so quiet I could actually hear the old wall clock ticking above the fireplace, each second stretching out longer than the last. Mom was the first to break it. She set her glass down harder than necessary and leaned toward me, eyes already glassy. "Liberty, he's your brother," she said, voice trembling like I'd just insulted her cooking instead of her request. "Family helps family. That's how we've always done things." Dad jumped in before I could answer, pointing his fork in my direction. "You're doing well now. Cybersecurity pays good money. Remy's 27, he's trying to get his life together after everything that went wrong. This car is an investment in his future." Remy, my younger brother Remington Bowers, 27, still living in the basement, finally looked up from his phone. He turned the screen toward me so I could see the glossy photo of the matte black Porsche Cayenne, fully loaded, the exact one they'd picked out. "The dealership already ran the credit app," he said, shrugging like it was no big deal. "They just need the final signature and the rest wired. You're pre-approved anyway." I felt my stomach twist. "You put my name on a $95,000 car without asking me." "It's not like that," Mom cut in quickly, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. "We knew you'd want to help. You always have before." Mercy, my little sister. Mercy Bowers, 21, home from college for the weekend, rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might stick. "God, Liberty, you're being selfish." She muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's just money. You have plenty." Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. "Enough. Your mother's right. We raised you better than this. When one of us needs something, we step up. That's what family does." I stared at each of them in turn, Mom already crying. Dad red-faced, Remy scrolling again like the conversation was settled, Mercy glaring at me over her phone. The same people who used to brag about me to their friends were now acting like I owed them my entire bank account because I'd finally made something of myself. "You all decided this without me," I said, keeping my voice low, "and now you're mad that I won't just roll over and pay for it." Mom reached across the table, trying to grab my hand. "Sweetie, please. Remy's been through so much. This car could change everything for him. People judge you by what you drive." Remy nodded along like she'd just dropped wisdom instead of the most shallow thing I'd heard all year. "Exactly. I can't keep showing up to interviews in that old Civic. It looks pathetic." Mercy chimed in again. "You're literally the only one at this table who can afford it without blinking. Why are you making this a thing?" I pulled my hand back from Mom and pushed my chair away from the table. The legs scraped loud against the hardwood. Dad's face darkened even more. "Sit down," he ordered. "We're not done talking about this." I stood anyway. "Actually, we are?" I said, and walked toward the hallway before any of them could stop me. The second I stepped into the hallway, my phone buzzed against my hip, a single text from my best friend Cameron Hart, the only person who knows everything that's been going on. "Are you there yet?" I typed back one word. "Yes." Then I opened a group chat I'd created 8 months ago and sent the exact message I'd saved as a draft. Come over now. I hit send to cybersecurity specialist Annika Desai, and my attorney Caden Bush at the same time slipped the phone into my pocket and took a slow breath. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. This moment had been coming for a very long time. I walked back into the dining room where everyone was still frozen in the same positions, like someone had pressed pause on a bad movie. Mom's eyes were red, Dad's jaw tight, Remy staring at his plate. Mercy scrolling again as if nothing had happened. I pulled my chair out and sat down calmly. They all looked at me, waiting for an apology or an explanation, or maybe for me to finally say yes. Instead, I folded my hands on the table and spoke in the same tone I use with difficult clients at work. Before we keep talking about this, I said there are 2 people I need you all to meet. Dad's eyebrows shot up. What the hell does that mean? Mom wiped her eyes quickly. Liberty, honey, now isn't the time for games. It's not a game, I replied, checking the grandfather clock in the corner. They'd be here any minute. Remy finally put his phone face down and leaned back with that smirk he's had since high school. Who your therapist? Because we clearly need one right now. Mercy snorted at his joke. I didn't react. Less than 60 seconds later, the doorbell rang, 3 short chimes that cut straight through the tension. Dad started to stand, but I was already on my feet. I'll get it, I said, and walked to the front door without looking back. I opened it to find Annika Desai and Caden Bush on the porch exactly on time. Annika carried a slim laptop bag slung over her shoulder, and Caden held a leather portfolio that I knew was packed with 8 months of evidence. They both gave me the smallest nod, nothing dramatic, just confirmation. I stepped aside and let them in. As we walked back toward the dining room, I could hear Mom whispering frantically to Dad Remy, telling Mercy to put her phone away, the sudden scramble to look normal. When the 3 of us appeared in the doorway together, the whispering stopped instantly. Everyone stared. I broke the silence. Mom, Dad, Remy, Mercy, meet Annika Desai and Caden Bush. They've been helping me figure some things out for the past 8 months. Annika gave a polite smile and lifted her hand in a small wave. Caden simply inclined his head, professional and unreadable. Dad recovered first. Helping you figure what out exactly? I didn't answer him yet. Instead, I gestured toward the living room that opened off the dining area. Maybe we should all sit down somewhere more comfortable. This is going to take a while. The doorbell rang right on cue. Annika and Caden stepped inside, carrying a laptop and a thick accordion folder that I knew held every receipt, every screenshot, every transaction for the past 5 years. I closed the door behind them and led the way back to the dining room where my parents, Remy and Mercy, were still sitting in stunned silence. I didn't bother with small talk. Everyone, this is Annika Desai, cybersecurity specialist, and Caden Bush, my attorney, I said, gesturing toward each of them as they took seats at the table. Annika set the laptop on the table and connected it to the big TV on the wall with a single HDMI cable, while Caden opened the folder and slid printed summaries across the table, one in front of each family member. Dad stared at the papers like they might bite him. Mom clutched hers without looking down. Remy leaned forward, trying to act casual, and Mercy just looked confused. Annika clicked the remote, and the first slide appeared on the screen, a simple timeline stretching from 5 years ago to last month. She spoke calmly, the same way she explains breaches to corporate clients. Over the past 5 years, a total of $95,000 has moved out of accounts tied to Liberty's name without her knowledge or consent. She advanced the slide. Bank statements filled the screen, highlighted transfers from an old joint checking account my parents and I had kept open after college for emergencies. The amounts started small, $200 here, $500 there, always labeled gift or family expense. Over time, they grew into 4-figure withdrawals that I'd never authorized. Next came a list of credit cards opened as authorized users on my accounts cards I'd never seen, with balances run up at electronics stores, car audio shops, and online gambling sites. Annika clicked again, and peer-to-peer loan statements appeared, each one listing me as the primary borrower, my social security number clearly visible, totaling another $38,000. Caden took over without missing a beat. And most recently, he said, pulling a single sheet from the folder and holding it up, this purchase agreement for a Porsche Cayenne, submitted to the dealership 3 weeks ago, complete with Liberty's forged electronic signature, and a credit application using her information. The room exploded. Dad slammed both palms on the table. We were only borrowing. You were never supposed to find out like this. Mom finally looked at the papers in her lap and started sobbing into her hands. We always planned to pay it back once Remy got on his feet. It was just temporary. Remy's face had gone completely white, all the earlier confidence drained away. He kept opening his mouth like he wanted to speak, but nothing came out. Mercy scrolled through the summary in front of her eyes, getting wider with every line. You guys used her name for all of this, she whispered almost to herself. Annika stayed professional, clicking through a few more slide screenshots of text messages between Remy and a loan app, emails confirming new credit cards sent to an address I didn't recognize, and finally the dealership paperwork with my forged initials in the exact same looping style I've used since high school. Caden closed the folder and looked straight at my parents. Every single transaction is documented. Every login, every IP address, every electronic signature. There is no ambiguity here. I sat back and let the weight of it settle over the table. For 5 years, I'd noticed small things, odd charges, credit score dips I couldn't explain, but I'd trusted them. I'd told myself family doesn't steal from family. Tonight proved how wrong I'd been. Mercy shot up from her chair so fast it scraped loudly against the floor, her eyes already red and glassy with tears. You're trying to destroy our entire family over money, she screamed, voice cracking on the last word. How can you sit there and do this to us? I looked straight at her and answered without raising my voice. No, Mercy. You all destroyed my trust a very long time ago. I'm just finally showing you the damage. Mom dropped to her knees right there on the dining room rug, reaching for my legs like I was still the little girl who used to run to her for comfort. Please, baby. She sobbed, fingers clutching the hem of my jeans. We're so sorry. We never meant to hurt you. We can fix this together. Dad stood up slowly, face purple with rage and humiliation. He pointed a shaking finger at me. If you take this any further, if you make this public or drag lawyers into our family, you are no longer welcome in this house. Don't ever come back here again. The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt them land, but they didn't burn the way he wanted them to. They only made everything clearer than ever that this house had stopped being home a long time ago. Remy finally found his voice. He slid off his chair and knelt beside Mom, eyes pleading. Liberty, I swear it was mostly me. I messed up. I'll get a second job, a third job, whatever it takes. Just give me a chance to pay it back in installments. Please, sis. Don't throw everything away. Mercy stepped closer, tears streaming now. You're the oldest. You're supposed to protect us, not tear us apart. How are we supposed to survive if you walk away? Annika and Caden stayed perfectly still, letting the chaos unfold without interfering. I appreciated that more than they would ever know. I looked down at Mom, still clinging to my legs, at Dad towering over me with that same threatening stance he used when I was 15, and came home late at Remy on his knees, bargaining at Mercy, crying like the world was ending. For a second, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Then I remembered every time my credit score dropped and I thought it was my fault. Every time I paid a bill I didn't recognize and told myself I must have forgotten. Every time they smiled at me across this same table while quietly emptying my future. I gently but firmly pulled my legs free from Mom's grasp and took one step back. I spent years convincing myself that family means forgiving everything I said. Tonight I learned that sometimes family means knowing when to stop forgiving. Dad took a threatening step forward. You walk out that door with them and you're dead to us. The threat used to scare me when I was younger. Tonight, it just sounded tired. Remy tried one last time, voice breaking. We can figure out a payment plan. I'll sign whatever you want. Just don't cut us off. Mom was openly wailing now, rocking back and forth on the floor. Mercy stood frozen between anger and disbelief, mascara streaking her cheeks. I looked at each of them one more time, memorizing the scene so I would never second-guess myself later. Then I turned to Annika and Caden. I think we're done here. I looked at my family one last time and spoke as clearly and calmly as I ever have in my life. I'm not filing charges. I'm not calling the police. I'm not suing any of you for a single dollar. I don't want one more minute of my future tied up in courtrooms with people who were supposed to love me. Mom stopped mid-sob and stared up at me from the floor. Dad's mouth opened, then closed. Remy's shoulders sagged with what looked like relief until I continued. But listen carefully, because this is the last conversation we will ever have. From this second forward, I am cutting every tie. Every single one. I no longer consider any of you my family. Mercy made a small wounded sound, but I kept going. Tomorrow morning, I will freeze every joint account that still exists, cancel every card any of you have ever been attached to, and remove every permission any of you ever had to access anything in my name. By the end of the week, my phone number will change, my address will be unlisted, and every trace of me will disappear from your lives. Dad found his voice again, low and dangerous. You don't get to just erase us. I already did, I answered. The moment you decided my credit was your emergency fund, I stopped being your daughter and started being your ATM. Tonight, I'm closing the account permanently. Remy tried to stand hands out like he could still fix this. Liberty, please. There has to be some middle ground. There isn't, I said. I gave you middle ground for 5 years. You used it to dig the hole deeper. Mom was crying again, but quieter now. The kind of crying that comes after the fight is already lost. She stayed on her knees watching me like I was a stranger walking out of her house. I turned to Annika and Caden, who had remained silent and professional the entire time. We can go now. Annika closed her laptop with a soft snap. Caden gathered the few papers he had brought in and slipped them back into his portfolio. Neither of them said a word. They simply followed my lead. I walked to the front door without looking back. No one tried to stop me physically this time. The only sounds were Mom's muffled crying and the quiet shuffle of Annika and Caden's footsteps behind me. I opened the door, stepped onto the porch, and pulled it shut with a soft click that somehow sounded final. The cold November air hit my face, but it felt clean. Cleansing. We walked down the driveway to where Annika's SUV was parked at the curb. I didn't speak until all 3 doors were closed and the engine was running. Thank you for coming tonight, I said quietly. I needed witnesses more than I needed lawyers. Caden met my eyes in the rearview mirror. You handled that with more strength than most people ever find. Annika reached back and squeezed my hand once. It's over, Liberty. The hard part is done. As we pulled away from the house on the quiet Eden Prairie street, I watched the porch light disappear in the side mirror. I didn't cry. I didn't feel empty. I felt lighter than I had in years. That was the last time I ever set foot in the house I grew up in, and the last time any of them ever saw me. 3 years later, I was sitting in my new apartment in downtown Minneapolis when I received the very last message I would ever get from Mercy. It was a single paragraph, no greeting, no apology, just facts. She told me the bank had foreclosed on Mom and Dad's house 6 months earlier. Without the quiet transfers I used to make every month to cover the gap in their mortgage, they had fallen behind almost immediately. The sale barely covered the debt. They were now renting a small 2-bedroom in a part of the suburbs none of them ever thought they would live in. Remy never took delivery of the Porsche. The dealership canceled the contract when the financing fell through, and he lost the $12,000 deposit. Last Mercy heard, he had sold his old Civic just to stay current on rent and was driving for both Uber and Lyft 12 hours a day. The dream car was gone before he ever sat in it. Mercy herself had to drop out of college for an entire year because there was no money left for tuition. She moved back home, worked 2 jobs, one at a coffee shop in the mornings and another waiting tables at night, and eventually scraped together enough to finish her degree online. She graduated last spring, but the debt she took on to do it will follow her for years. None of them ever faced criminal charges. No one went to jail. I never filed a single lawsuit. They simply woke up one day and realized the safety net they had counted on for years had vanished, and the fall was entirely on them. I, on the other hand, have never been better. The first year was the hardest. I changed my number, moved twice, and learned to flinch every time an unknown number popped up on my screen. But time did its work. My credit score climbed higher than it had ever been. My savings grew faster without invisible leaks. I traveled to places I used to only pin on Pinterest boards. I slept through the night without the low-level dread that had lived in my stomach for half a decade. Cameron remains the only person I still call family. We meet for brunch every Sunday, and she never asks about the past unless I bring it up first. She was there the night I walked away, and she has been there every step since. About 18 months ago, I started a private online support group for people who have been financially exploited by their own relatives. It's not a registered nonprofit, just a locked Discord server and a small monthly membership to cover costs. We have a little over 300 members now. Every week, someone new posts the same story with different names: parents who borrowed retirement funds, siblings who opened cards in secret, cousins who drained joint accounts. Reading their messages used to make me angry. Now it just reminds me how common this is, and how brave it is to finally say enough. I don't need the law to punish them. I only needed to disappear from their lives. Sometimes silence and distance are the heaviest consequences of all. To everyone who has listened to this story all the way to the end, thank you. Thank you for giving me the space to tell it, and for sitting with the uncomfortable truth that the people who are supposed to protect us can also be the ones who hurt us the deepest. If you've ever had to choose between your peace and someone else's comfort, I see you. If you've ever walked away from family to save yourself, I'm proud of you. And if you're still trying to figure out how to set that boundary, know that it gets easier on the other side. Drop a comment and let me know where you are in your own journey. Have you gone no contact? Are you thinking about it, or are you still hoping things will change? Whatever it is, you're not alone. Thank you again for being here. See you in the next one.